Bane has finally been set free from the shackles of Sporting, and Arsenal fans are sprinting around the corner in slow motion like they just seen Omar from The Wire on their way to Tesco. They've finally got their 9, but is it enough to get over the line? Close your eyes for a sec, let me cast your mind back to 2015, November. France v Germany. ISIS show up outside the Parc des Princes, letting off explosions so loud they can be heard on the TV broadcast. People are panicking and fearing for their lives. Giroud crashes it past Neuer for 1-0, celebrating with ice in his veins like nothing's happened. He don't care about terrorists, he just wants to score goals. Why am I telling you this? Well, Arsenal have gone one step further and signed a terrorist himself. The best of the best strikers are ruthless and selfish, and I'm going to be honest, every interview I've seen so far, from his Champions League one saying, oh, they don't know me, to his most recent Arsenal one, seemed to me like he's obsessed with banging goals for the Gunners, like Gunnar Nordahl when he arrived in Milan to score nearly a goal a game from 1948 to 1955. For those of us who remember. We're going to talk about his strengths, weaknesses, Arsenal's window, and some predictions for this season for him individually and the club as a whole. So Gyokeres now joins Madueke, Norgard, Zubimendi, Mosquera and Kepa as Arsenal look to finally get over the line after finishing second 3 times in a row. To see if they can win the league this year, we got to understand why they didn't last year. Of course, Liverpool were fantastic, that one goes without saying, and they've strengthened even further, by the way, having their own mini Galactico type window. But Arsenal themselves will know what went wrong with them last year. Of course, the injuries were a massive factor because for the first half of the season, they were looking decent. They were bagging goals from open play. It was looking fluid. They were spamming set pieces when they had to if they couldn't break teams down. Well, naturally, when your captain gets injured in Martin Odegaard, when your best player, Bukayo Saka, gets injured for long term as well, and then your first choice striker, second choice striker, and third choice striker all go missing and you got to play Marino up top, you're going to look a bit weaker. Yes, Havertz has been banging goals and the fans have been enjoying the waka waka Marino somehow turned out from a pretty meaty midfielder into someone that, I think, was it the Leicester game he came on? People thought that Arteta was trolling. They said, nah, they're not going to really play this guy striker. He came on, he bagged 2, and he'd been playing striker ever since, and somehow seems more composed than all their other players. However, they are nice guys. Gyokeres is a ruthless killer. I'm not going to lie and act like I've always rated him because I definitely haven't. But look, the numbers speak for themselves, unfortunately, and that says that he's bagging 50 goals a season. So as far as he's concerned, he's doing his job, because his job is not to entertain you or I so that we can say, yeah, this guy's cold, yeah, he's sick at football, sick at dribbling. His job is to put the ball in the back of the net and win his team trophies, and that's what he's done. He's not a technical dribbler who can bust a little shoulder drop or do some step overs, but give this man an inch of space from any angle and he's lethal without even looking. The across goal finishes, the near post roof of the net finishes, he's got them on lock. When Van Nistelrooy was doing that for United, they loved him. They don't care that he was running like Wreck-It Ralph when he scored that goal against Fulham, because goals win you titles. Do you think City fans scared that Haaland cannot do ball rolls? Win the league anyhow you can. Of course, football fans like myself, I watch for entertainment. But if it's you and your own team, you don't care how the goal goes in. It can fly off somebody's shoulder every single time or bounce off their shin pad. It don't matter. That being said, for all of Gyokeres' strengths, we do have to also cover his weaknesses. First and foremost, we know he's not incredible in the air for someone so tall. Honestly, a little bit like Haaland in that regard, who, yeah, they will bag some headers here and there, but nowhere near as much as they should. And now I've been seeing fans on Twitter, obviously Arsenal fans are going to be defending the signing of Gyokeres. Understandably so, it's your team, you're going to do whatever. But saying that Henry rarely bagged headers, Van Persie never really bagged headers, Dennis Bergkamp was not sitting there spamming headers. Guys, I think we're being a little bit disingenuous, because what those guys lacked in heading, they made up for in virtually every single other department. Creativity, skills, two-footedness. It's not the same thing as Gyokeres not really scoring headers. Nevertheless, again, all goals count for the same amount, so it doesn't matter how you get them. However, when I say they all count for the same amount, I'm not so sure that that translates internationally anymore, because yes, he got the European Golden Boot in terms of pure numbers. Obviously, the weighting is different, so Mbappe actually won the Golden Boot. But in terms of pure numbers, he scored the most goals in Europe. But watching Club World Cup, with each passing day, watching the Portuguese teams in that tournament, I said, nah, we got a half his goals. Another week pass. No, we got to divide it by 5. It's all good and well elbowing man from Casa Pia and Boa Vista and them, man. But the Premier League is different. Now, what I will say in his defense, he has cooked in England already. Of course, as everyone knows by now, he has played for Coventry, he's played for Swansea, and usually players who do bark it off in the Championship are actually able to kind of take that form to the Premier League. We've seen it with Mitrovic, has had some very decent seasons, obviously Ivan Toney before he went to Saudi, and Gyokeres, to me, I don't really know him personally, but he seems like someone that is very determined to prove all the doubters, all the haters wrong, from externally and even within the fan base, because as we've all seen on Twitter, many people had their preferences of, oh, go and sign Sesko, go and sign Isak. Some people, for whatever reason, wanted Watkins. I'm going to tell you right now, this is not a prediction, it's a spoiler. Word to the bro, El Face. Watkins does not touch Gyokeres' numbers this season. It's going to be Gyokeres' first season. He will outscore Watkins. That shouldn't even be like a bold statement that I'm saying there. But some may be surprised to hear that, because for whatever reason, they rate Watkins super high. Now, I do want to touch on the 2 games that obviously Gyokeres played against English opposition just this last Champions League campaign. I will start with the Arsenal game, because for whatever reason, there are many conflicting stories from different fan bases about what actually happened on that day. From my memory, it was Gabriel and Saliba patting his head like a good youth until he got away on one occasion and had that shot where he kind of smashed it near post. Other than that, completely pocketed. And there's no shame in being pocketed by the partnership that I'd argue were top 2 in Europe the entire of last season and have been for a couple years now. So that is not any slander towards him, but the way people were acting like, yeah, they gave him a really tough time, blah, 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 I wasn't really seeing that. I thought they were pretty composed, and whenever he got to a sprint race, they were comfy. That's not even to add then afterwards, of course, the fact that, yes, they lost 5-1. Gyokeres said in the interview when he signed for Arsenal, saying, yo, listen, that 5-1 was kind of crazy, because as much as they were efficient defensively, going forward, they were bagging and bagging and bagging. One of them, of course, being Gabriel, who went and done this Batman celebration. He made his profile picture a Batman thing. I don't know if it was sending shots or whatever the case may be, but one thing I do think people are not really factoring in is that, yo, the matchups between them in training, forget about them being buddy-buddy and doing the announcements together, because it's funny now that they were kind of enemies, now they're buddies. The battles in training are only going to serve to better them both, because Gabriel and Saliba for the past couple of years, again, big respect to like Marino and Trossard and Havertz and these man, they've not been facing that kind of ruthless, sadistic 9 before, until now. And vice versa, Gyokeres coming up against the likes of Gabriel and Saliba, he's going to have to find ways to use his body differently. You can't just start barging guys out the way like they're stick insects anymore. This is not the Portuguese league, but week in, week out, day in, day out against these guys, should do a good job. The reason why I mention as well barging guys is because the hat-trick against Man City, I'm going to keep it a buck, I didn't really rate it. I understand this Manchester City, goals are goals, we're always going to say that. However, a couple pens and then bullying Simpson Poussey is not going to move the needle for me personally. That's all. Again, you got to play whoever's in front of you. It's not his fault that they were playing centre-backs that are teenagers, or a defence that completely stunk the entire year. You got to do what you got to do, and rightly so, he bagged his hat-trick, and he should be very proud of that, because it's not easy to get a Champions League hat-trick. But people are going overboard talking about, oh yeah, he packed a hat-trick on Pep's head. He did, and listen, penalties are there to be scored, because Arsenal players don't necessarily have the best record from the penalty spot. So again, if he's to start taking the next season, that is not a problem. But I just want people to be careful when they go on their Excel spreadsheets. They go on SofaScore and say, yep, you know what? I just read that this guy bagged a hat-trick here, bagged a brace there. Watch the games, because again, he's someone that kind of flickers in and out of games. You don't really see him that often. I'm going to go super niche with you guys. I watched a game last season. I believe, I might have to double check it, but I'm like 90% sure they were facing a team called Casapia. It was around April or May, and I had an ACCA. I was waiting on a Sporting win for like £800, so naturally I had to tune in. And I'm thinking, okay, this Gyokeres guy, is he going to show me something? And he was kind of just, you know, languid, not really getting involved in the game. He wasn't really fashioning his own chances. In the end, there was a guy, I believe, by the name of Eduardo Quaresma, a centre-back, who smashed it in from 30 yards to win them the game in like the 96th minute. But I came away thinking again, Gyokeres, I don't really know. Now, of course, rival fans particularly United fans who thought they were getting him because it's Amorim's dog, you got Ed. They're gonna hate on him now, of course. Missing his ex might hate on him as well because he literally sacked her off to say, yo, you know what? I'm cutting all ties with everything Portugal. So that could be the women, the food, the club. I'm going to England. But is it worth it? In terms of numbers, I'm not really a stats man. However, it's important to quantify strikers. I do believe Arsenal are still missing a left winger, so a lot can change from now to the end of the window. But for a fee of, what is it, £56 million, I'll be honest, really good value, especially since he's coming into his prime. He is hungry to score. We've seen him take the number 14. To be a successful signing, I'm expecting minimum 20 Premier League goals in your first season. Chuck in a cold little 5, 6, 7 assists, and I'll class that as a good season individually. But of course, it's not about that. It's about getting Arsenal over the line. If Arsenal somehow get a Leao level left winger, I do believe that streak of second, 3 times in a row will finally come to an end. Just like the last time that they went second 3 times in a row and then went invincible the following year back in 2004. Now, I'm not saying Arsenal got invincible this year. They most certainly will not. I do see them and Liverpool having a much closer battle this year. Let me know your goal predictions. Will he succeed? Will he flop? Keep on liking up the videos. You guys have been supporting massively for my first 3 videos. So I'm here for day 4. We're going to be here 10 days, 20 days, 100 days. Whatever it takes to get that 100k like, we will be there. So let's try hit that 500 likes. Subscribe if you're new around here. Check out the retro shots on my website. And other than that, have a fantastic week. In a bit. Bosh.